bridge your knowledge to success.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Adhitya Talks. Today we have Mr. Prakhar Andlay. And welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good evening, Aditya. I'm doing well, and thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor, sir. Today we are going to learn a lot. And for the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us about yourself? How you got to this point in your life?
Sure. So I did my schooling from Delhi, Bharati Vidya Bhavan, born and brought up in Delhi. After that, I went to Singapore and studied information systems and applied statistics at Singapore Management University. Post which I worked at Bank of America Merrill Lynch in Singapore itself in their corporate banking technology group, primarily working in transaction banking technology, which looked after payments, FX reporting, etc. After doing that for about 5 years, in 2017, I came back to India and joined a program called Youth for India, which is run by State Bank of India Foundation. Through that, I got a chance to work with an NGO called Gram Vikas in Kalahandi district, Odisha. Post which I got an opportunity to work in Meghalaya with the state's Basin Development Authority on livelihood projects. I then was working with Chhattisgarh State Government as a consultant, again on rural livelihood projects. And just last year, I started my own company, which does rural livelihood, rural entrepreneurship, and rural production centers consulting and design, as well as we are working on promoting organic fertilizers.
Okay, sir. That's really interesting. So, as a student growing up, were you always interested in social impact, or was it something that grew up with you?
Uh, so I was not directly exposed to it. So when I was in eighth, ninth or whatever, I did not have a lot of idea कि social impact क्या होता है या rural development क्या होता है. I was exposed through it through some visits. So my father was quite actively involved in a lot of these activities, and I got a chance to accompany him to some of these visits. एंड थ्रू दैट आई वाज एबल टू गेट सम सेंस कि लोग इस फील्ड में भी काम कर रहे हैं और इस एरिया में भी काम कर रहे हैं बट there was no direct exposure per se. I had not done a lot of research on it. I had not read up a lot on it. Whatever small little experiences I got by visiting a lot of these NGOs uh, through my father, and he had a large circle and large network that was involved in these activities. तो उनके साथ जो थोड़े बहुत इंटरेक्शंस होते थे उससे जो समझ आया वो आया बट अदरवाइज नो देयर वाज नो डायरेक्ट एक्सपोजर और एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ दिस फील्ड.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So when did this itch come inside you that you wanted to work in this industry? During your time in Singapore and Bank of America, was there a specific moment that made you think about rural development and made you think that this is what I want to do with my career in the future?
So I would say there were two instances. One, 2009 or 2010, sometime जब college की गर्मी की छुट्टियों में I'd come back. At that time, I was just looking at how do we apply technology to various domains. Like we had read about banking, we had read about logistics, supply chain, healthcare, and so on. But that when I came back to India for chutti for my summer break, ITC at the time used to run a program called eChopal, which was essentially connecting farmers to market through technology, through price discovery, market information, and so on. I think they're still running this program. I haven't checked recently. But at that time, I got a chance to experience this. I got a chance to visit some of these centers that were operating in Madhya Pradesh, in and around Bhopal. And that is where I think the first idea of using tech in this space and in this domain came about. Second was I was trying to participate in a conference in Dubai called Education Without Borders. And for that, you had to submit a paper. And for some reason, I chose the rural entrepreneurship as my paper, that how can we boost rural entrepreneurship in India. Having had no idea of rural development, having had no idea of rural entrepreneurship, I just wrote a paper. I was lucky enough that the people who were guided me well enough that my paper got accepted. I got a chance to visit this conference. I was in Dubai for a couple of days. And the interactions I had back then, because people from all over the world had come there. And a lot of them who were my age, who were working in this field, working in this domain, while in college had started their social impact enterprises. Be it in India, there were some from India, there were some from Pakistan, a lot of them were from South America, Africa, and so on. So that sort of gave me some more insight as to what people my age were doing, not just people who are one or two generations before me, but what people my age were doing. And how are they using their knowledge and their insights and their analysis to solve very large and pressing problems in villages.
That's really interesting. So when you initially came to Madhya Pradesh to just check out the situation in India, the rural situation in India, what surprised you the most compared to what you had already imagined before?
So the experience in Madhya Pradesh wasn't as insightful in terms of how a village works because this was just going to specific centers. But I think coming to Odisha after Singapore was probably the biggest learning point for me. Uh, because obviously we have this imagination of a village, right? कि खेत हैं और नदियां बह रही हैं and people are happy and so on. But at that time, when I came back in 2017, and there was this huge thing about how India is moving towards digitalization. Right?
Yes.
There was geo network coming up everywhere. Everyone had a smartphone. Everyone was using. I think UPI had just about started penetrating the market. Mobile usage बहुत बढ़ गया था. But when I went to the village, the village I went to in Kalahandi, we did not have a network. The roads were there, but the public transport connectivity was very poor. And this is 2017 or 2018, though it's not that long ago either. So the idea that there are still places which do not have the sufficient infrastructure, even in 2017 and 2018, was quite a shock to me. But I mean, sure, Singapore is highly developed in terms of its infrastructure. But even India, if you look at cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, etc.,
They are not that
you
big.
have a very right, precisely right. And for you to go from that to a place जहाँ पे पहुंचने के लिए you need to travel 6 hours. There's only one bus available from district headquarters. That for someone who was very very conveniently would take out his phone and just Uber or Ola someplace to go someplace, to wait for a bus to start at a particular point of time and to wait 6 hours to travel only 100 kilometers, जो कि हम 1.5 या 2 घंटे में कर लेते हैं. I think that was quite a big shock to the system.
Yes, so that was a big shock, but tell me something that surprised you pleasantly. What are the biggest misconceptions you think urban people have about rural India?
So so we had done this exercise. So when we had started this program, Youth for India, as part of our orientation, we had to go through an exercise that was called Naranpur Express, which was a village economy simulation exercise, I think developed at some point by IRMA, Institute of Rural Management, Anand. And all of us had to do it as part of our orientation. What that does is it essentially, it's a game that you're playing where you are a farmer family. You may be a family of 4, you may be a family of 8, and so on and so forth. And you are given a certain resources कि आपके पास इतना जमीन है, इतने लोग हैं, बैल हैं, पानी की व्यवस्था है, नहीं है, and all that. How do you navigate that? And I think that the complex equations that you need to do was such an eye-opening experience that people in our villages may not be very educated, may even be illiterate, but the kind of complex equations they're able to solve for their day-to-day life, whether it is farming, whether it is optimal utilization of resources, कि बच्चों को कहाँ पढ़ाना है, कितना पढ़ाना है, the very sad scenario of having to take their kids out of school. I think these are very, very complex decisions that need to be taken, and the fact that they're taking it on a daily basis, in spite of the fact that they don't have, those uh, degrees or even school education in a lot of cases. तो हमें एक जो सिखाया गया है कि आप पढ़ लिख के you reach a point where you're able to
Make
do
decisions.
well, make decisions precisely and do well.
I think
The
points
fact
fact that they are illiterate, but they are not dumb. They are smart people. That this just points to a lack of opportunity given to them when they were young, and that is that created the scenario they are in, and they don't have any other choice. So that does not say that they are dumb, which is a very big misconception created by people that you have to have a degree or you have to have studied like to 12th grade to be smart. But that is that is not truth. So moving on, sir. What do you
So
think?
just one, I would not use the
Yeah,
word dumb in this scenario. I think we need to be a bit more considerate of that. But yes, I think you're perfectly right in your assessment. Ki,
I'm saying they are not dumb. I'm not saying they are
no,
dumb.
no, 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 absolutely, absolutely, I understand. But you're perfectly right in your assessment in that uh, experience teaches you a lot of things,
Yeah.
right? You and I can do whatever our degrees have taught us to do, but can we grow food for ourselves if we are given, let's say, 1 acre of land? हमें 1 एकड़ लैंड दे दें, बीज दे दें, पानी दे दें, कहो कि अब उगाओ, वो हम नहीं कर पाएंगे. Maybe 2-3 years of practice we'll be able to do it, but the similarly 15, 16, 17-year-old living in a village may not know all the history of the country or the geography or economics or maths and so on, but they're able to do those equations, they're able to do those calculations, they're able to grow something out of that land. So I think it's a different kind of experience that they have and different set of knowledge that they have. I mean, knowledge to dono ke paas hai, but it's just that our knowledge bases are very different. And the fact that in urban areas we are assessing everyone by similar standards, पर वो rural areas में वो standards don't necessarily apply.
Yes. Yes, that's really interesting. So, sir, can you tell us how you bridge the gap between urban planning and rural needs in your work?
In the work right now.
Yeah.
So in the work right now, we are not very closely looking at urban spaces.
Yeah.
What we do realize is that what used to happen back in the day, if you go back 100, 200 years, is that villages used to be production centers, जहाँ पे सामान बनता था, and cities used to be consumption centers. Consumption or trading centers. Now that pattern has reversed. अब जितना प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है, जितना मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहा है, वो सिटीज में हो रहा है, इंडस्ट्रियल एरियाज में हो रहा है, एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट इज going back to villages. And villages, people in villages, in their markets, in their heart, in their bazaar, are buying everything that is coming from the city and not locally. So this is what we are trying to do now. We are trying to work with communities in setting up local enterprises. SHGs have been doing it for quite some time across the country. There were a lot of local youth entrepreneurs who are
Yes.
doing this, but we are trying to do it at an institutional scale, essentially designing program that will allow the people living in villages to use their local resources effectively and move on from just being producers of raw material to at least first to second degree of processing,
Okay.
and some kind of value addition to happen in the villages itself, and not only create entrepreneurs but also become job creators in the village. So I won't say we are necessarily solving an urban issue, but we are trying to resolve some of the pressing issues in the villages.
And how do you do this exactly? Can you elaborate?
Sure. So, so this was a program that was done in Chhattisgarh in the previous government. It was called Rural Industrial Park. The idea is that if you, okay, let's take an urban center. In urban areas, we have what we call startup incubators,
Yes.
right? Someone has an idea, they know how to develop a product. All they need are the supporting facilities. कि मुझे काम करने के लिए एक जगह मिल जाए, मुझे कुछ एडवाइस मेंटरशिप मिल जाए, आई गेट सम क्रेडिट फैसिलिटी, आई गेट सम मार्केट फैसिलिटी, एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. We were trying to provide that as part of state government. State government project was to provide that, but for villages. Essentially, anyone in the village who wants to start their own enterprise. The state government had developed 300 centers. There was a work shed there. You
Yeah.
come, you are assigned a place in the work shed. You are supported by through some machinery, through some working capital support. If you want any skill development, any training, the state government would provide that as well. There was marketing connection. So all you had to do was come and start working and start producing.
Yeah.
Now, it could be anything. It could be like the traditional activities that happen in a village, the lohar, kumhar, the carpenter, badai, and so on. So they could come and set up their work here and would be given advanced technologies and marketing support and so on.
Okay.
FMCG, all around the country in the villages, they develop achar, papad, and other products. You come to the center, you build it at a large scale, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that you provide an enabling ecosystem for an entrepreneur so that all they need to focus on is
Creating.
solely production.
Yeah.
Precisely, creating value, and all the supporting facilities get taken care of by the government or whomsoever is running this center.
Okay, so basically you're creating rural production centers to help them create value on a in national scale and helping them achieve financial freedom as well as earn money. So that's really interesting. So what technologies do you use in bringing these two villages?
So there's not a lot of complex technology involved in this
Yeah.
because a lot of them already know how to build
Yeah.
things. They might be doing it in their traditional way. अब कोई अगर लोहे के पोल बना रहा है, फैब्रिकेशन पोल बना रहा है, they already know how to do it.
Yeah.
What we are doing is, let's say if they want an improved machinery, lathe machine or some other machine, then we can provide them that. So there's no complex machinery or complex technology involved in this. Because what we realized is the more complexity you add to the machine, the more amount of effort it is going to take at some point of time to, repair it or change it or bring spare parts.
Yeah.
So use the simplest available technology as opposed to, if you let's say you take firewood or उसमें जला के भट्टी जला के you're making something of your pottery वाला काम, instead you give them some sort of a thermal heating wala machine. I'm just giving you some examples. So the focus was not too much on giving complex technology. Focus was on building an enabling ecosystem.
Yeah.
अब उसमें टेक्नोलॉजी, स्टैंडर्ड टेक्नोलॉजी भी उसमें यूज हो जाएगी, दैट्स नॉट एन इशू, बट यू हैव बिल्ट अ वैल्यू चेन वेयर that technology and application of that technology, application of that machine or that process, that increases the production and increases the scale at which people are able to produce.
Yes, that's really interesting. So basically, you make this project cost friendly, and I think that's really interesting. So, can you tell us how about your project, about your work on Gauthans, and how how it helped farmers and cattle, and how did this idea come to your mind?
So, disclaimer, first of all, it did not come to my mind. So I was working in Chhattisgarh, and this was conceptualized by a gentleman named Mr. Pradeep Sharma,
Okay.
who was the advisor to the former CM, Mr. Bhupesh Baghel. Gauthans have traditionally been there in Chhattisgarh and surrounding areas. So the idea was that, okay, look at it this way: Gaushalas that we all know
Yeah.
can traditionally be seen as cattle old age home, right? This is where you bring your old cattle that you don't think is productive anymore. Gauthans traditionally have been what can be termed as a cattle daycare center. कि आप सुबह अपनी गाय को चराने लेके जाते हैं, then instead of bringing them back home early, if you bring them back home early, तो वो जल्दी भूखी हो जाएंगी. You need to feed them further. If you can't feed them, if you don't have the resources, then they might, get agitated, might leave your yard, go into the farms, and so on. So Gauthans used to be community spaces where you would bring the cattle after grazing, keep them for a few hours, uh, and make sure that they are fed again at that community owned center, community owned place before you take them back home. So in the Chhattisgarh government and Mr. Sharma sort of looked at this and conceptualized it at a state level. Can we build this into physical centers? So 10,000 such Gauthans, 10,000 such centers were set up all across the state where you would bring your cattle after you graze, after you've taken them for grazing, you'd keep them here for a couple of hours. Yahan pe you will be provided by the center, the cattle will be provided with the clean water, clean fodder, vet services, and so on.
Yeah.
And all the cow dung that gets generated will be purchased and procured by the government.
Okay.
So they were doing it at 2 rupees a kg. And all that cow dung, what do you do with that cow dung? So they started
Fertilizer.
Exactly. So they started doing organic fertilizers, vermicompost. So the SHG women in those villages were trained to make vermicompost.
Yeah.
I think about 7 to 10 pits were set up in all the centers. So now suddenly what happened is earlier the cattle that you would have and you would not know what to do with it, suddenly the cattle becomes a productive resource. It may not be giving you milk, it may not be helping you, till the land or plow the land.
It becomes a source.
It will.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely, because it is still giving gobar 5 or 6 kgs of gobar every day. And that gobar becomes an economic commodity for you. The waste becomes an economic commodity for you. And that was the idea, that it became a cattle-based economic center where the focus was cattle. You provide water, fodder, vet services, etc. The waste that gets generated becomes a commodity, becomes an economic resource.
So you have been working on this field. You're working in this field for many years now. So can you tell us what's the biggest challenge you have faced while working in rural development?
So biggest challenge that I have faced so far, and what I've sort of even in my discussions it has come through, is the idea of community ownership and community participation. I remember back in the day, when I first came back and I wanted to work with a self-help group. I had come with an idea कि मैं तो पढ़ा लिखा हूं, बाहर से पढ़ के आया हूं, इतनी नॉलेज है, इतनी जानकारी है, मैं तो कुछ कर ही लूंगा ढंग का, right? But communities and societies have their own way of working. Panchayats have their own way of working. So if you would have seen the show TVF का जो पंचायत वाला show है, to get anything done, you need to have sort of consensus from a lot of different people, a lot of different places. So one of the biggest challenges is getting the people to agree to something, right? And they may have their very valid reasons for not doing something. So you need to understand that, appreciate that, and try and figure out ways how you can bring everyone on board. The only project that will work, and this is obviously learning not only for me, but for anyone and everyone who was a part of that program, the Youth for India program and other such programs as well, is that only those projects work well where there is a sense of belonging by the community.
Yeah.
And community owns that project. मतलब मैं आके कुछ 1 साल में 2 साल में कुछ करके चला जाऊंगा, वो अगले दिन बंद हो जाएगा if no one is owning that.
Yeah.
And people will only own something, people will only feel a sense of belonging to something which they genuinely feel is of value to them. So I think the biggest challenge was trying to understand that community needs should be paramount, ought to be paramount. And Just because I am saying something needs to be done doesn't necessarily mean कि यही करना है. Does the community want it? Does the group, let's say your targeted group that you're working with, whether it is self-help group, whether it is school teachers, whether it is students, whether it is sarpanch of a village, do they really want this? And once you have their buy-in, I think it definitely smoothens out the process for you and makes sure that your project and your work continues for long.
Okay, so basically creating a sense of belonging, a sense of personal investment was the biggest challenge. And so basically the Gauthans created a sense of economic relief from that project. So that kind of thing was hard to understand initially. So that's very interesting. So how do you think local traditions play, what role do you think local traditions play in rural development as of now?
Uh, so local traditions obviously have a very strong role because, as I said, the Gothan idea used to be a local tradition, right? And that is essentially all that happened. All that Chhattisgarh State Government did was make an institutional framework around it. गौठान तो लोग पहले से यूज करते थे,
जी.
right? Similarly, a lot of your traditional crafts are a part of local tradition. They have been doing it for years and decades and centuries. But what we can do when we go to a village or when we go to try to develop any kind of livelihood program and project is capitalize on that existing skill, capitalize on that existing knowledge. Regardless of what kind of project that you're trying to do, whether it is education. For example, there's a very strong focus on bringing back the local tribal education or the local indigenous knowledge that used to be there. That is slowly dying away because we are not recording it enough. So local traditions, local knowledge systems have a very important role to play, and it is being taken into account very prominently now in a lot of different projects and programs that are being done. For example, I think Government of India itself is developing an indigenous knowledge repository of some sorts. So the fact that such initiatives are happening is a wonderful thing. That we don't impose something from outside, but we essentially take whatever is known already and try and see how that can be further popularized or maybe improved if required.
Sir, I have a very interesting question. I want you to hear it. Sir, what plan do you have for yourself and for villages in India in the next 10 or maybe 20 years? And like, let's create a number for 10 years, for 50 years, and for 100 years. Obviously, in 100 years, I think there is going to be a lot of development. But what is your view and what is your outlook on this question?
Oh, wow. Okay. uh, so, yeah, I think 10 years ideal scenario should be that there should be a very strong connectivity network all
Yes.
across, and not just digital connectivity, but even the infrastructure,
Yeah.
whether it is roads, whether it is public transport, whether it is health services. Because what we saw is that health services was lacking in a lot of places. Access to educational facilities, access to schools was a prominent issue. So ideal scenario should be that within the next 5 to 10 years that gets resolved to some extent, in that everyone in the village who wants to study or who wants to have access to the best of health facilities is able to get that. Over time, I obviously can't say for 50 and 100 years, but over time, long term should be that there is enough employment and livelihood generation activities within village itself that people don't necessarily have to leave. Because when I was in Odisha 2017, and I remember, so I was teaching in a high school, and I remember some of the kids would say, I would just ask them कि गर्मियों की छुट्टियों में क्या करोगे? Right? Like we would often get asked when we would be in school, right? And we'll say कि यहाँ जाएंगे, इनके घर जाएंगे, उनके घर जाएंगे. A lot of them would say कि हम केरला जाके काम करेंगे. And these are 15, 16-year-old boys. when you would ask them why, they would say कि केरला जाएंगे 3 महीने में, we'll work at some roadside restaurant or eatery, or we'll work somewhere, we'll earn 10-15,000 rupees and we'll come back. And as you grow, as they grew, even the elders were doing the same thing. They were migrating to Kerala or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka. And
Okay.
that was obviously a very difficult thing to see, that for economic opportunity, you have to leave your place. So ideal scenario should be that you are able to generate enough opportunities within the village, through the local resources, through local technology, through local knowledge systems, that anyone who wants to work in the village doesn't uh, lose out for lack of opportunities. They
Yes.
have the opportunity for education, for livelihood, for health, everything.
Yeah, so I think we should come up with, in the next 50 to 100 years, we should obviously be on the standards of that the rest of the world operates in. And I think there should be enough opportunities on a city level that a person does not need to leave. Obviously, a person can leave if he wants to for extra opportunities or to work in different industries, but there
Absolutely.
should be a holistic, there should be a every city should have its own economic hubs. So sir, moving on, I have a new type of questions I'm going to ask. It's a rapid fire question, where I
Oh,
have prepared 10 questions that you have to answer in one sentence only. uh,
sure.
can we begin?
Sure.
Yes. Okay, so let's begin. Your favorite village innovation, tell me.
Oh, trying to think. I'm sorry, I'll come back to this question. Next, please.
Okay, so one thing urban India should learn from rural India.
Oh, valuing relaxation time and valuing the celebration time that
What's
people in
the
villages have.
what's the biggest lesson that you learned from your banking days?
How to manage a diverse team and how to work in a diverse team. I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I had.
What was the most rewarding moment in your work on rural development?
So I was working on a digital education project in Odisha, and initially I was teaching through laptop and so on, but then we set up a digital education setup in local language content, and to see the class being run by students themselves, without my involvement or without involvement of any other teacher, that was the most rewarding thing.
One message for young people thinking about social impact.
uh, just do it.
Corporate office or village field.
Oh, I'm sort of moved towards corporate office now, back to corporate office now, but yeah, I think one day in a week should be dedicated to village field.
What's your life motto?
Oh, so I say this often, and people laugh, but I say tension lene ka nahi dene ka.
What's your
That's what I go.
What's your favorite traditional farming practice?
To be honest, I don't have any because I have not been exposed to as many farming practices. But so yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a favorite farming practice.
Best advice you have ever received?
So yes, one advice that I received that I can try to live by is any decision that you make sure that you fully own that decision, so that down the line you don't have any regrets, or you can't put the blame on someone else. If you're taking a decision, you also have to own it, whether it goes well or bad.
What's your dream in life?
To make my family proud, and to hopefully uh, deliver on the promises that I have given to a lot of people. But I hope for, but I think ideally to make my family proud of what I've done and who I
Yeah,
am.
yeah. I thank you, sir. The session, the rapid fire session is over, and I think you have given fantastic answers. And sir, moving on, How do you think your initiatives are working on environmental conservation? Because it's a very bleak future we have. Because in the future, when we develop cities and develop villages into economic hubs, economic centers, there is going to be a lot of harm in to the nature. How do you think we can manage that sustainably and ensure that our villages grow?
Uh, sure, thanks. I'd speak in respect to organic fertilizers. Uh, we have all seen the impact chemical fertilizers has had, and now slowly but surely the organic fertilizer awareness as well as adoption is increasing. Uh, so the kind of work that we're trying to do, whether it was through the Gauthan project in Chhattisgarh, through the Chhattisgarh government, or whether it is through the promotion of organic fertilizers that we are trying to do now, the idea is that we move our soil back to its original healthy state. I was listening to some presentation some time back where they were saying that the spinach that you used to eat back in 1960, the amount of iron and the amount of proteins you would be, and the amount of other nutrients that you would be able to get from, let's say, 100 grams of spinach, it has considerably reduced today as it was, let's say, 50 years back. Uh, so the fact that we are pushing towards organic fertilizer, and even the government of India has brought out a lot of initiatives, whether it is organic farming, whether it is support to decentralized production. Our initiatives are obviously a small step in that regard, making sure that our soil becomes healthy as compared to the place where we are at right now.
Okay, that's interesting, sir. Can you uh, please advise two people that you would like to see on the show that you know?
That I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I would strongly suggest Mr. Pradeep Sharma, who I'm working with, who has had a wonderful and a very diverse career from petroleum engineering to agriculture to policy. Since he was advisor to the former CM, he was very closely involved in policy development. So he's definitely one. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, second person I can't think of right now.
Yes, we can discuss this after the interview as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes,
Sir, lastly, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please
I
advise one
did.
unique thing you have liked about Aditya Talks, because I liked a lot about your story and your personality and your experiences, and I hope my viewers you also liked the story and you learned a lot from it. If you liked anything specific, you can mention it in the comments below. And yes, sir. And any suggestions that you think which should be incorporated to improve the experience of our viewers.
I don't have any suggestion, but I love the fact that this series is focusing on so many diverse fields. For example, there was a singer and actor who was here. I think there was something about was it about neurodivergence or something
Yes.
along those lines?
Yeah.
There was one series, one discussion on that. So the wide and varied spectrum that you're looking at is not something I was exposed to back when I was your age. So well done, and kudos to you for taking out time to do this as opposed to going and watching TV, which I would have done when I when I was back there when I was your age.
There is nothing wrong with that. I kind of, this is
No,
like
no,
I'm looking
absolutely
into life.
not.
I've learned a lot from your experiences, your story, and it gives me motivation that I can also work in this field and do something if you have done it. So thank you, sir, for giving your advice, and it was a great show. Thank you, my viewers. Let's see you next week. Thank you. Shai for now. Bye bye.